r/NoSleep. Posted by you/FoxscapeArtist. The animals in this zoo seem kinda off. Part 2. Please like and subscribe to support us. The zoo was silent and cold. I brought an extra flashlight just in case, but I was afraid of using them in case there were any night shift workers around. I didn't know much about how zoos worked. Maybe a bunch of the species ate at night, or had to be fed every few hours, I don't know. Shh. Gotta be quiet, Zara murmured from beside me. Yes, I was sneaking into a zoo in the dead of night with a 3-year-old. Not an ideal situation, but I didn't have much of a choice. I didn't even want to bring Zara. I had no desire to take her back to this dreaded place, and small children weren't exactly obedient, understanding little angels. But the little brat had caught me sneaking out and was about to run to the adults and throw a crying tantrum if I didn't let her come. And to be fair, she had been the only person to immediately realize Zarif wasn't Zarif. She's a smart kid. Plus she listened to me way more than to any of our parents. I sighed and looked at Zara. Yes. Gotta be quiet. Shh. I did feel like a bit of an idiot, thinking that perhaps she could also somehow identify which of these animals was actually her beloved big cousin. But I guess it was very slightly better than coming here empty-handed and just randomly staring at every enclosure, asking every creature to blink twice if you're my brother. Zara nodded. Looking for Zarif? Yes. I'd explained the whole endeavor to her when we'd snuck out. Well, not the whole complicated thing. Telling her that there was a terrifying scheme going on where weird entities took over people's bodies and turned them into animals wasn't exactly going to get through to her. I told her Zarif was at the zoo, and we were going to look for him. But we had to be very, very quiet, like during hide and seek. She understood, glad to tag along. She wanted Zarif back too. Scaling the wall was a bit of a challenge. They weren't too high and I'd brought a ladder, but there were security cameras and I had to do some wandering to find a blind spot. And I didn't want to let Zara climb up on her own, so I resorted to giving her a piggyback ride and telling her to hold on tightly while I did the climbing. We dropped into the zoo, my feet making a moderately loud thud. I glanced around to ensure we weren't already given away. Nothing. Just a cold silence and a few beams of moonlight streaming across the dark, desolate area. A few of the macaws were still on the branch. Some had retreated at the back of the enclosure to sleep. I gave them a small smile. Birds, Zara whispered. I nodded, dragging her along. Come on. Zarif. I stopped. Maybe this was a good time to test her skills? I lifted her up closer to the birds. Pretty birds, right? The sleeping macaws had woken up now and flew closer to us. They were all staring intently. Zara nodded. Pretty birds. I like that one. She pointed at a blue macaw near the corner of the cage. Any of them look like Zarif? I said, sounding like a fool. Zara gazed at me, then giggled. Zarif a bird? I scratched my head, regretting this stupid idea already. No. You know what, let's move on. Maybe the blink twice if you're my brother idea would have to do. We didn't come across any staff members for a while. The zoo felt eerily silent and deserted as I trudged along with Zara, stopping briefly at every enclosure and ensuring none of the inhabitants were Zarif. He'd show some recognition upon seeing us, right? From what I gathered, the people all still had their original minds and memories, just in a different body. Some part of me also felt a little selfish. I was only here to get my brother. All those other people would still remain trapped. I wondered if any of their loved ones had attempted to rescue them too. More importantly, did anyone succeed? Big Lion, Zara whispered as we passed them. Some were asleep, some were still pacing. One looked at us curiously, eyes widened. I leaned in closer. Is that you, Zarif? I murmured. The lion didn't do anything, just seemed to cock its head to one side. Simba, Zara said a little too loud, pointing. I shushed her. Shh. Quiet like hide and seek. Remember? Oh. Yeah. Be quiet. I guess the lion wasn't Zarif. I did the whole blink twice routine, and nothing. We moved on, but not before I felt a pang of sympathy just leaving him behind in there. Tap, tap. I whipped around, hoping it was some tree branch moving in the wind. Tap, tap, tap. Nope. Unmistakably the sound of footsteps. I grabbed Zara and leapt behind a bunch of foliage next to the lion habitat, making a shushing motion at her in the process. Zara nodded and copied me. "Luka Churi," she whispered. "That's hide and seek in Bengali." I gently clamped a hand over her mouth, and peered out through the gaps between the leaves. The footsteps were still sounding, but nothing popped up for a while. Tap, tap, tap. They were getting closer. At long last, a man walked into view, dressed in jeans and a polo shirt. I guess staff uniforms weren't required for night shifts? He didn't seem to notice anything off, just strolled past the lion enclosure nonchalantly and stopped at a door marked staff only near the other end of the path. I craned my head a little to see better, hoping the leaves wouldn't rustle. The man knocked a few times. Nothing happened. He knocked again, this time with impatience. Nobody opened the door. The man clicked in exasperation while I frowned. Shouldn't all staff members have a key or some access card or something? The man had turned around and was walking back towards us, an annoyed look on his face. He stopped in front of the lion enclosure and started tapping on his phone. That's when I noticed it. The glassy, eerie look in his eyes. He wasn't a human staff member. He was one of those things. I held Zara closer and squinted, studying him. He had the phone to his ear now and looked properly pissed off. "Hello? Hey, I'm calling from right outside the back door. No one's letting me in." Pause. The man listened to whatever the person on the other end was saying, and clicked in annoyance again. "It doesn't matter how many are busy. Someone should be at the door. I'm outside right now, just open the damn door." Of course, Zara suddenly felt the need to ask who's that, and point at the guy. I grabbed her immediately, ready to run and regret every decision I'd made until then, but it was too late. The man peered over the foliage and stared at us. "What the hell?" We stared back for a split second, not saying anything. Panic had flooded through me and my brain went numb. Think, Foz, think. A sliver of an idea crossed my head. "Please work. This has to work. Please." "We work here," I said simply, making my eyes look as dead and glassy as possible. The man raised an eyebrow. "What? Since when do they let the ones in kids' bodies work?" "The ones in kids' bodies? They thought we were too valuable to the team to give up," I went on, hoping I made sense. Did my eyes look glassy and unblinking enough? The man's gaze lingered over to Zara, who wasn't saying anything but obviously also wasn't doing much to make herself look not human. "She's trying to stay in character," I said hurriedly. The human family these kids were from, they noticed something off about her immediately. Not very good at acting like a human 3-year-old. The man seemed to buy it, but he still looked skeptical. "What part of the lab did you oversee exactly? And what was your name before the turning? I'll need to check if you're on the roster." "The lab?" I couldn't exactly make up a fake name and hope they had so-and-so on the roster. Too much of a coincidence. So I switched to a different direction, wildly hoping it made sense. I sighed, looking apologetic but still trying to keep my eyes glassy. "I'm sorry, I lied. We don't work here. We just got sick of the human family these kids are from, so we came back here to catch a break." Pause. It only lasted a few seconds but it felt like an eternity. I thought my heart would beat out of my chest. Then to my surprise, the man guffawed. "Of course," he said. "It takes a while to adjust, am I right? But hey, this is the best way." I nodded, my hands cold with sweat. "The best way for what exactly?" "I'm bored," Zara whined suddenly. I patted her head and the man's eyes narrowed. "She's practicing. Getting better at it, I must say," I said. The man's eyes remained narrowed, but the suspicion that had been dripping from his face was thawing. "I suppose you can come to the lab tonight, just for old time's sake. But you can't keep doing this every day. You need to adjust." I nodded again. "Of course." Another person opened the door, and we followed the man inside. I wasn't sure what to expect. He'd mentioned a lab. So a lab I suppose, but what kind of lab? The inside of the staff room was mostly dark, and yet bright aqua blue rays of light hit me in the face as we entered. I blinked a few times while Zara squealed. Lights. They weren't lights. They were coming from some kind of machine in the middle of the room, with what looked like a big glass tube in the center. No, not tube. Tubes. The one in the center was the only one hooked up to a machine, but other tubes were situated around the place, surrounded by a tangle of wires. The tubes were all filled with the most horrifying sight I'd ever seen. Strange mutant humanoids, some mostly human looking, some sporting feathers, some with antennae sprouting out of their heads, some with totally deformed skulls and faces, some with broken, snapped off limbs. Most were lying in pools of blood. All devoid of any emotion except terror. Bone-chilling shrieks were sounding all around the room, desperate cries for help. Help us. Please let us go. I want to go home. I want my ma and baba. I want to go. Please let me go. Ma. Ma. I want my ma. Let me out. I haven't done anything wrong. Please let me out. It hurts, oh God it hurts. Ma. Baba. I want my mom and dad. The last cry was from the tube closest to us, a kid no older than 7 inside. His limbs were deformed and snapped backwards, claws poking out from where his fingers should be. Fur was sprouting out from his back. He couldn't move, he lay limp on the bottom of the tube, his eyes wide open and hopeless. A woman was standing in the middle of it all, looking pissed. Next to her was a teenage girl, around 18. Before them was the big machine, with the largest tube hooked up to it. A full-fledged, non-mutant leopard was inside that one. And it was talking. The leopard was begging to be let out of the tube in broken sobs. I won't tell. Please let me out of here, I just want to go home. Please. I want to go home. I want to go home. I want to go home. Zara widened her eyes, and I could see a potential excited shriek coming. Talking leopard. I put my finger over my mouth and hurriedly reminded her of the quiet rule. Leopard talking, she whispered. Yeah. Shh. Let's see what happens. I desperately tried to ignore the crying coming from all around me, part of me feeling like an asshole for doing so. Zara evidently didn't like it either, she whined slightly and hid her face in my stomach. Monsters, she murmured. It felt so harsh. They weren't monsters, they were just people. People like us. The woman and the girl had turned around to see who just entered. The former squinted at us, eyes locking into mine. My heart skipped a beat. Who are these children? She said cuttingly, still holding a suspicious glare. I hoped I wasn't breathing too loud. The man luckily ignored her question because he seemed too caught up in the talking leopard. He strolled up to them, also looking properly annoyed. I tried to take the opportunity to slink away, but that woman knew something was up. Hey, you two. Who are you? She asked again. What the hell's going on? Why is it still talking? The man interrupted loudly, glaring daggers at the lady. I looked around frantically for a place to hide. An array of huge cardboard boxes with weird science-y looking labels on them was at the other end of the room. Me and Zara could probably slip in between them. Yeah, I know we'd fooled the man, but I wasn't pushing my luck. The woman had clearly noticed something fishy. Better for them to not see us for as long as possible. The woman glared back at the guy. Machine messed up again. It didn't do the conversion right. We're starting this test over. The man scowled. How many times have I told you to make sure that thing's up to date? What if this happens with one of the actual subjects? It won't. That's what these test ones are for, correct? Whatever. Just make sure it's fixed, and the tube is back in the booth. Zoo opens at 9 a.m. He gazed around the room. A lot of failures today, I see. Ignore those. We'll probably dispose of them. This one still has hope. As long as the booth's ready by tomorrow. If not, then maybe hold off on leopards for now. You can never have too many parrots. The woman turned back to the machine, the glassy-eyed human-looking girl by her side. The leopard was still begging for help from inside the glass tube. The woman fiddled with some buttons and wires and finally pressed one. A big blue button, I noted. Nothing happened at first. Then a horrible suction noise arose. The leopard's cries got drowned out by the sound of whirring machinery, and Zara and I stared in disbelief. Something was happening inside the tube. The leopard kept shrieking as it slowly changed shape. Paws became fingers, the tail disappeared and black waves of hair started sticking out from its head. A human teenager was now in the tube, an exact replica of the girl standing next to the woman. The girl in the tube sobbed while the not-human girl outside cocked an eyebrow. I think I did a pretty good job, right? The hair color in your form is a bit off. Do better. People notice these things, the woman retorted, ignoring the sobbing. The man clicked in exasperation. I've told you before to take reference photos of the test subjects too. That's the whole damn point of using the photo booth. No one has time for that, the woman snapped back. I reattached all the wires and checked the bits and pieces. Press the button, it should work this time. The man jabbed his thumb on another button. A green one this time. I thought I could take a wild guess what happened next. She turns back into a leopard, right? No. The poor girl, still crying and begging, started transforming back into her dreaded leopard form, but something went wrong. Horribly, horribly wrong. She didn't turn fully, a few parts of her body started sprouting fur while others stayed human. Blood-curdling screams, muffled by the glass, echoed all around the room as the girl banged desperately on the walls of her prison. Let me out. Let me out. I covered Zara's eyes. The machinery kept whirring, and when it finally stopped, the girl had gone limp. She lay in the tube, lifeless and unmoving, eyes unblinking, the ghost of her last scream etched upon her face. My heart broke even further when Zara pushed my hand away and peered at the girl. She sleepy? She asked innocently. I managed a nod. Yeah. She's sleepy. Crap. She's dead, the woman muttered, not a sign of remorse or sympathy in her voice. The man put his hands in his head. I told you. Hold off on the leopards for now. Now we got another body to take care of. Fun leisurely midnight activity, am I right? The man and woman had started going at each other's throats again about what to do with the girl's remains, amidst the still ongoing cries for help. I took a deep breath and tried to organize my thoughts. Green button did the conversion. Blue button reversed the effect. And these things were some kind of shape-shifting body snatchers taking over human lives. Or they were aliens? Demons? I wasn't entirely sure about that part. Not that I cared at the moment. Knowing that I had a way of reverting Zarif back was enough. There were more doors around the room. Safe to bet that there were more of these scientists working. I looked at the wall behind us. A window. Great. I was just about to open it and climb out with Zara in one arm, when the woman's cutting voice came again. And who were those kids? They looked like humans. What are they? The man started to answer right as a cardboard box slid to the floor with a thud. All eyes immediately turned beetily at our little hideout. I slammed the window open and, using a box as a footstool, leapt out of the staff room. A series of shrieks followed. What are they doing here? How could you let a couple of humans? They're not humans, I didn't realize. Oh, shut the hell up. We have to kill them. Now. That wasn't happening. I was getting out of here, with my brother, and I was doing it tonight. We dropped on the ground with a thud, but I didn't get the time to feel proud about escaping. Another thud followed soon after, and a searing pain shot through my leg. I screamed, loosening my grip on Zara in the process. No. Zara shrieked. You hurting, Ifaz? I didn't know what I was expecting, but Zara promptly picked up a rock nearby and hurled it straight at my assailant's face. I almost would have laughed if it wasn't for the stabbing ache from my leg. A for effort, but the rock probably went right past the guy. Instead, a welcoming yelp of pain sounded from behind me. I took the opportunity to kick at the man as hard as I could, grabbed Zara, and fled down the path. I only realized after a few moments of running that my leg has been dripping blood and essentially leaving a trail for those freaks to follow. Crap. I dove behind a bush next to the reptile exhibit, and ripped off one of my sleeves. The bad man hurt you. The bad man hurt you. Yes, shh. We have to stay quiet or the bad man will find us again. Zara quietened her voice, but kept mumbling about how the bad man hurt me. My makeshift sleeve bandage seemed to be working pretty well. It would have to do for now. I ruffled Zara's hair and smiled. Not bad, picky. That means small one. Zara grinned. Yeah. I hurt the bad man, didn't I? Hurt him with a walk. Yeah. You did. Come on. I could already hear their voices getting closer. Damn that bloody trail I left. I picked up Zara and made sure my leg wasn't dripping out any more blood. It looked good. We fled again, in a random direction. I kept glancing at my leg to ensure it wasn't bleeding, and grabbed a map from one of the zoo kiosks nearby. Maybe it would help. It would at least tell us where everything was, and we could check them off one by one after ensuring my brother wasn't in there. Where were you, Zarif? Will I ever see you again?